Welcome back to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need it in our business and communities and life. Mr. Hiivala, you again.
Yeah, well, you can run, but you can't hide, I guess the old saying goes.
Well, we're going to have a good chat today about leading through crisis. And this is something that you and I find ourselves talking a lot about. And of course, first we got to define what in the world is a crisis. We act like we've lived through some in our short little lives. And then we got to talk about leadership in a crisis moment. I think, when we were chatting about this topic, we definitely see it in our business at Westcom. But at the end of the day, what we really care about is our employees.
No doubt.
They have been through some crisis in their lives and even in their business life. So when you think about the word crisis, what is even coming to mind for you?
Well, I think it depends, like you just said, on the person, because there's so many different things that a crisis for me might not be a crisis for you. I was in North Dakota last week with a guy driving around in his truck, and this little incident happened that was, in my mind, like, who cares? I mean, that's a nothing. I mean, it wouldn't even hit my radar screen. Totally derailed him.
Really?
Like, it threw him off for 4 or 5 hours. Like, this, in my mind, was a nothing incident. But it didn't matter what I thought. It mattered what he thought. So them are the opportunities, I think, where you can listen to the person, understand where they're coming from, why it's a crisis to them, and they just want to be heard.
So you think that these crises are different for everybody. What was this particular one? What was it centered around? An employee issue? Was it
His wife called him, and she got a ticket from the police.
Oh.
And if my wife called me and she got a ticket for running a stoplight, I'd be like, oh, bummer. That's $30.
But for this particular person, this was maybe their first time. Who knows?
I don't even know why it turned into something that kind of spun them out a little bit, but it did.
Do you feel like you had to lead them through this? Or like you
I
mentioned,
attempted to anyways. I don't know if I did or not, but I certainly made an attempt to.
And your approach to it was just to listen.
Just to listen and give feedback.
So this kind of goes back to where the nail in the head thing, if anyone's watched YouTube and they see between the man and the wife and they're trying to figure out a problem. It's a really, really good YouTube video.
Right.
For leadership. I think we've shown it at our Christmas party, right?
Absolutely.
Listening to understand rather than listening to solve. Is that one way you could sum up how you can help through a crisis?
Listening with the intent to understand, not to solve. Or not to respond.
Not to respond.
Even, actually.
So
seek first to be understood, understand, then to be understood.
Real leadership stuff.
Correct.
Because the unknown secret about leadership is you're really not doing a whole lot of leading. You're doing a whole lot of listening.
Well, I read something the other day that kind of struck me, that this leadership thing, like, people don't want to be dragged along and told stuff, but they want to be as inspired. So I can't tell you how to do something, but maybe I can inspire you to have the desire to do it yourself, right? And it's a different thing than saying, Shane, go do X.
So when you think about leading through a crisis, do you spend a lot of time that you have to be re-inspiring people? Or how does a business, it's almost like cheap to say, well, COVID's going on. We got to go lay off 70 people. These are folks that we know, their wives, their families, their kids, or maybe we know their husband if it's a wife who works for us. Like people that we've worked hard to motivate and encourage over the years. What are you going to do? Go listen to them just cry and still give them a pink slip? But what about everyone else? How are you leading through that time?
One of the greatest inspirations for me personally, and maybe I've related this to you in the past, but there's this man, his name was Admiral Stockdale. In 1960-something, he was shot down in Vietnam, and he spent 8 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And he was the highest ranking officer ever to be held, and especially for that long. So here he was, the highest ranking officer in this prison camp. He really could only lead by example because he's in a prison camp, but he's the highest ranking officer, so everybody's looking to him for inspiration. And he told himself that he's going to use this experience to be the defining moment of his life. In fact, it's going to inspire him so much that he wouldn't trade it for anything else. And he did this by having the unwavering belief that things will change. And at the same time, confronting the brutal reality of where he's at. Like, I'm acknowledging I'm a prisoner of war, they're beating me, but one day I'm going to be out, and this is going to be my springboard for success in life. And if you can inspire your people with the belief that we are winning, we are going to win. Today is bad. We acknowledge that. We had to lay off a bunch of people, but we're here for the long run. Our grandkids will be working here, and their grandkids will be working here. We're here to energize America, and America is going to need energized until the lights get shut off. The Big Bang, or whatever you want to say.
Depending on where you land.
Correct.
So you're saying, if you sum that up again, what was that?
It's called the Stockdale Paradox. And it's the unwavering belief that things can and will get better, while at the same time acknowledging where we're at today.
And doesn't it seem like that always does happen, right? So at Westcom, we can easily talk about COVID because it was a huge impact in our business and in our families' lives. And even if you were still gainfully employed at Westcom, it wasn't a especially fun time in the form of, like, man, this is really cool. Gift cards are arriving by the dozen, and we're getting Wagyu steaks. And, there's some people that feed their people ribs and everything else. And we're like, so
yeah, we get
uncool.
Frozen hamburgers once in a while.
Well, I think, isn't there those little round pizzas in the freezer you can get or something? Know, the poor guys out in the field, they can maybe cook a burger or something. But regardless, during that time, it can feel pretty hopeless. And so as a leader, I think one of the things you have to do is believe in that Stockdale Paradox, even more so than what your team is going to believe in. Because if they're looking, you've kind of told me privately before, maybe even publicly, like, one of the things about being a leader is it's pretty hard for you to have a bad day because it's pretty contagious and it really drags people down.
True story.
So you really have to, as a leader, be consistently optimistic. There's this like little saying in business, fake it till you make it. And in a crisis, you really better be ready to step up. But I've never really found that you can fake it.
It has to be genuine. And that's the interesting thing about this paradox to me, because General Stockdale talked about optimism. And he said the optimistic people died of a broken heart. Because they would be optimistic. Hey, yeah, it's June. We're going to be out by Christmas. Christmas would come. They'd be like, oh, shoot, that didn't happen. We'll for sure be out by next Christmas. They were optimistic. But when their optimism kept being deflated, they died of a broken heart. Where he had this internal fire that, no, I can't say it's going to be Christmas. I can't say it's going to be a year. I can't say it's going to be 5 years. But I will get out of this prison. And that's the fire that keeps people going, like the long-term game.
And I think that's why it's so important when we meet with people as leaders and we're talking about whatever crisis they're in, is acknowledging the crisis, but not putting an end date to their crisis either.
Exactly.
You think about, we had one gentleman, he's actually leaving our employ now. The little booger is going to go retire on us, and great guy. I'm going to miss the heck out of him. And one of those times where, what do we say, give people strong wings to fly when the time is there. But sometimes, boy, that's a tough thing to do. And with this individual, it's a tough one to do. He lost his daughter. She had some health concerns, and it was a traumatic event that took place. This is going back 6-7 years ago. And when we reached out to him, that's what kept pounding in my head. And I finally told him, I don't know how long it's going to take for you to grieve. If I had to guess, it's a lifetime grieving situation. I don't know. I've never lost somebody that close to me.
Right.
I can't even pretend to know. But one thing I don't want you to do is put a time on that. Just embrace every day for what it is. And I think during COVID, when you think about businesses, and by the way, COVID was really the worst, or maybe one of the easiest crises we've had to lead through, just because the world is in such a confused state now. They don't let businesses fail. So out comes all this money and this weird crap, and you got to lead through that stuff. But it really, was it a crisis? I don't know. It was a crisis because you could almost start giving up on people just because society was so confused.
For sure.
But it's so important that we don't put an end to things. So in business, your motto, like we recently did a podcast with a company, their motto is a fire inside. Well, where's the end date to that? There is none. It's an
infinite game.
It's an infinite game. And so when you see other businesses or other leaders that have these mottos that have, we're going to go sell 100 bags. Well, that sucks. What are you going to do after you sell 100?
Yeah. Do you retire then? It's game over?
And how do you inspire somebody when they get to 59th bag and, we want to increase efficiency. Oh, could I please get the next 40 done quicker so that I can be done with my job sooner?
Yep.
That's really not a fun environment to be. So I think for me, when I think about leading through a crisis, it's one thing on my mind is that remove the time barrier. Because we don't know when crises will end. And in fact, oftentimes they're going to end when you're ready for them to end.
And the other big thing I think about is people can take good news, obviously. And people can take bad news, but they can't take nothing. People need to be communicated with. This is the state of our business today. Things aren't looking well, but this is what we're doing about it. Versus silence. A lot of times companies go into silence mode and people out in the field, here, there, have no idea what's going on until you go talk to them. And they can take the bad news. They just need to be told.
And oftentimes if they're the right employee on your team or the right person in your life, they're going to be responsive enough to the point, like, how can I help you through this?
Absolutely.
That was the thing that was so crazy about COVID is Calvin Blakeman, when we had the crisis, like someone just called it a war battle session. War room thing. When we met on Saturday morning when COVID happened in our business and we're all sitting around the conference table, Calvin Blakeman looked at me and he said, Shane, don't you dare forget what we learned in 2015. Which in 2015, there was an oil market crash, and in 2016, it got real ugly. The thing we learned at that time was even the bad news, it doesn't matter. People need to know. And when we went out to North Dakota, especially, and we sat the team down and we said, here is the absolute brutal honesty of where we're at, and I don't know where we're going. I got to just be honest with you guys. I don't know. But I know one thing. COVID aside, America still needs energy. And that's why we're out energizing America. I don't know, given this latest disruption, what that looks like. And more than likely, some of us are going to probably be losing some hours at best case scenario. But we're not going to stop energizing America, right? That was so important to me. What happened there was, as I was talking in front of this crowd of people that I was actually kind of scared of, if I'm honest, right? Delivering this news in Newtown, North Dakota with the garage door closed and like
nowhere to run.
Yeah, nowhere to run. I'd have to go through the crowd of people. I saw in their eyes that they weren't going to let us fail. And I felt really humbled by that. It had nothing to do with me, but they were not about to see this company fail. They stepped up. But I really believe it was because Calvin Blakeman looked at me square in the eye the week before, and he said, whatever you do, be honest, and don't be a cricket.
And that's that cool thing
about working with people who hold you accountable, right? So when we talk about leading through crisis, you're talking about time, having the unwavering belief that things will get better.
It's not even maybe the things that'll get better, that we are going to prevail in one way or another.
We will win, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
There's good things that come out. Do you have a specific crisis in your time that you can look back to and that comes to mind? That you had to personally lean into? Because I think for me, sometimes I can be frustrated that how can these little things, go back to your North Dakota experience last week, how can that little thing upset you like that, right? But then I think, wait a second, until you experience that, you don't know, right? So or if you experience a bigger thing, that thing is the biggest thing in your life until something bigger happens. The crisis in 2015 with oil prices was a huge deal, and I learned a ton from it, and I tried to do better, right? I found myself in 2020, though, like 2015 was nothing but a snap of a finger. Like I would have dreamed to have 2015 at my doorstep again, right? And so I had to remind myself that all these other people on the team that are like blowing this little issue up, whatever it would be at that time, like somebody forgot to lock the shop door. Hey, thanks, Bill, but I don't know if you realize this. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do about the $300,000 payroll next week with no revenue coming in the door, right? Though much bigger crisis, but how is he supposed to know? He's never been through that crisis. So the ability to step back and live in their crisis while at the same time dealing with your own is a very difficult thing to do.
Yours has to go on the shelf once in a while.
Yours has to go on the shelf a lot as a leader, doesn't it?
Yep.
So where do you bring your crisis?
Well, I feel pretty fortunate because I feel like I've had pretty shallow experiences when I think about what a real crisis means to me. Certainly there's been ups and downs in life, and I think about, well, even coming to work at Westcom. I don't know that I would call it a crisis, but there was this period of time where we were dancing, right? It was 6 months. It was during COVID. It was all these ups and downs and uncertainty and what were we doing? And I was talking to you and I was talking to some other companies. And through that, I found something out which kind of amazed me is, turns out overweight, middle-aged guys have some value. Like people actually wanted me to come to work because of life experience, which is something that you can't get other than through life experience. And so when I acknowledged that fact, it came to me that it doesn't really matter where I end up. I know that I don't want to drive to the range anymore. I'm going to end up somewhere. And I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be in a week. I don't know if it's going to be in a year, 10 years. I don't have a date. But I will find a job closer to home so I can spend more time with my family. And like I said, I don't know that that's necessarily a crisis, but it's still that belief system that I'm going to win. Well, but I can't put a time frame on it.
And we can talk about leading through challenges, right? That's a challenge. And that's the whole point about a crisis. Whatever you're dealing with in your life, that is the biggest thing you have going on. And if you want to motivate and lead employees or anybody, because I don't even like calling them employees, but if you want to have a job satisfaction, then you better be willing to participate in your team members' downs just as much as in their ups. Because it's a little easier to celebrate wins than it is to celebrate these challenges.
For sure.
And in order to do that, you have to keep going back. I think it's so important for a business to have that mission statement. What are you actually doing? I don't care if you call it a vision, a mission, a value. Who gives a flying flute? But you better have some purpose. If you don't have purpose, then how do you gotta
have a why?
How do you inspire somebody to work through their challenge?
Yep.
And I think even nowadays a little bit, when you think about the mental health issues that we're experiencing, and we even see this in our team members.
For sure.
A lot of them spend time in your office, calling you or coming in your office, and many of them are dealing with mental health struggles. If not them, somebody in their family, myself included. You have to keep going back to what is our purpose, and even, as a human being, why am I here? Go ahead and have that conversation, explore that, and then start narrowing it down. That what am I going to do just today to get through today? And during a crisis, that's sometimes what we have to do. Let's just go down to this hour. How about we go outside and we actually put that control panel together? And as we're putting that control panel together, we can visit about what's going on. And so often, just the fact that I just accomplished something gives me hope that it's going to be better.
That's really interesting. I actually talked to somebody this week, and that's what I brought out is, let's get a piece of paper. All these tasks that are running around in your head that you're feeling overwhelmed with, write them down. Put a little box in front of it, and then you have 10, 15, 80, doesn't matter. They're all on this piece of paper, and you can go, check, 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 and you get a sense of accomplishment. and things go out of your head onto a piece of paper, clears your brain space, and you have the ability to check things off. It works phenomenal for me because I can easily get overwhelmed with, right now, we need people everywhere. I got calls coming in. I got managers on vacation, so I can't hire the guy even though he's like a journeyman electrician ready to go to work Monday, and we need him. So how do you manage all this
Chaos.
Put it on a piece of paper and you do what you can do and move on to the next task? If I can't do anything with this, then I got to move on to this.
Well, and you know what it turns out, John, is so oftentimes we go too far ahead in our crisis moment. So I think back to like during COVID or during an oil downturn, we start talking like, all right, well, obviously we don't need as many people. So with us in our business comes trucks. What are we going to do with trucks? Should we hang on? How long do we think this is going to last? Should we get rid of trucks, right? So we start like, well, maybe we should sell trucks. And then someone will be like, yeah, but in 10 years when you're out, blah, blah. Okay, guys, I got a secret for you. If we do not win today's ball game, we don't even have to worry about the World Series. It ain't going to happen. So I appreciate your love of talking about the next 10 years and the 30 years but what your brain is doing to you is, this is such a tough situation. You're going to a situation that you know you can't solve and you're just going to go play in that world. But I need you to come back here. We're going to have a little meeting and we're going to figure out how we're going to get to first base. And it turns out if we get to first base, then we can talk at second, third, and get back home, right? And eventually we'll even talk about winning the game, and we'll talk about winning the World Series. And then we'll talk about being I don't know how sports work, whatever, right? I just know my dad was into baseball, and I like to throw a ball with the boys. But, you know, you
got to hit a single.
Okay, is that what happens?
Yeah.
Well, can't you get hit by the pitcher? That happened at our softball game. Somebody actually intentionally at Westcom, they were throwing, remember we were winning? Weren't we winning? This was
we
back
always
2 years.
win, but...
Right. But this was kind of like legitly. We were playing those stupid cheeseheads.
The old age factor.
Yeah, no, this was just like not accounting for old age.
Right.
We were just playing, and yeah, they were getting kind of bitter or whatever happens. And that kid from Wisconsin, he threw it to hit me. I was like, whatever, you know? And I was actually kind of excited because I got on base. Yeah. Bottom line, though, is you got to sometimes quit thinking so much about the future. And so we just talked about, okay, we're going to lead through a crisis. One of the ways is we're going to remind you that things will get better, and we're not going to put a time on when that's going to happen. But now I'm saying, well, don't think too much about the future. So it's kind of a...
Well, you have to confront the brutal reality where we're at today.
And the way you do that is let's just take care of a little thing.
Yep.
Let's just take care of, like, how about we talk about what we're going to do about payroll this week and get a solution for that? And then we'll come ahead and we'll talk about what we're going to do about your truck. But it turns out if I don't figure out payroll, you're just going to quit, and we're not going to even have a conversation about your truck. So we're going to back up. And I feel like that's an important strategy to use in a lot of areas.
I agree.
In your personal life or business life. When you've worked elsewhere, up at the mine, they had crises, did they not? Steel prices up, down.
Yeah, there's definitely the same cycle. I mean, U.S. Steel, for example, where I worked, one of the indicators that we looked at as a company, U.S. Steel, was drilling rigs, because drilling rigs went exactly to the pipe that we made. So if there's lots of drilling activity, we made lots of pipe. Life was looking rosy. So yeah, it's all interconnected.
Interesting. You're saying the mine up in Minnesota was actually watching the metric.
Drill rig count was on our sheet of on all our forecasting things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I also think that's important about when we talk about leading through challenges. As leaders, we have to figure out what is going to be the metric that we can base our feeling on. Because oftentimes when you think about this, these are like weird, we love to put these unquantifiable things for the reason why we're feeling the way we are. Like, I don't know, the world just seems confused, so I'm going to be depressed. Well, wait a second. How about we decide, does that even impact you? Turns out that I know that Ukraine and Russia, they're doing whatever they're doing. And I know that, the Supreme Court nominee is over there and you don't like her, or, maybe the election didn't go your way, or maybe it did go your way and you're wondering why you haven't got the check in the mail to make your mortgage, whatever. At the end of the day, like, you can't control that. So can we talk about something you can control and kind of like bring it way back And it turns out when we do that, we're like, weird, my brain is trying to respond in an emotional way to something 100% out of my control. Enter COVID, 100%. What do we talk about at Westcom? We're going to let the crazies be crazy, but we ain't going to be crazy with them.
Circle of influence. What's in my control?
And when I think about people who've effectively led through challenges, I think that's what they do. They let the crazies be crazy, and they just don't participate in it. That doesn't mean they don't make changes to their business. We've had to make a lot.
And that you can't be affected by it.
Right.
But you don't let it dictate who you are. You know, even you think about tough conversations. Tough conversations in a crisis, that it's okay if I talk to Shane about a behavior and I hurt his feelings because we're talking about a behavior that Shane's doing. That's growth. But if I harm Shane by talking about his identity or who he is, then I'm doing the wrong thing. So you can have a tough conversation and hurt someone's feelings. That's okay. That's growth. But if it gets to the type of person you are, then you're going the wrong way.
Like if you're actually finding fault with the fact that I'm short instead of the fact that I'm crabby.
Correct.
Two things I can,
Correct.
One I can change, one I can't.
Right.
Not that you would ever accuse me of being short.
No, absolutely not. I like my check.
Yeah. Well, I hope you think more about it than that. If it's only for your paycheck, I'm going to start questioning having you help lead through challenges or through crisis.
Well, in all honesty, I told you the story that I drove by and I seen this sign out in front of Westcom that said Energizing America. And I don't know what it was, but it struck something inside of me. And I've told you this before, that I thought to myself, that will get me out of bed in the morning. And it does. Some mornings you wake up and you're lethargic and I should just roll over because really I don't have a meeting till 9, and not that I can sleep in so well anyways at my old age, but I've got time for this. People need power.
Wasn't that incredible when we went to the college yesterday, how uninspired those folks were? Did you catch that?
Yeah. Did you hear me do a little cheer to try to...
I was really actually fascinated by that cheer because you've done it in front of Westcom people. I didn't know you would actually do the, what is it called? We got spirit. Yes, we do. Yes. I didn't think you would actually do it in front of a group of college kids.
Well, everybody needs inspired.
Well, I hope you were successful because it looked fairly outrageous to say the least, but kudos to you for being able to do it. But it really struck me that I wonder how many of these folks that are finishing their college days, in the last 2 years, all the crazy that's went on in the world are just in like this dark spot and don't know what in the world to do with themselves or with anyone around them.
Well, if we go back to that mental health piece and the state of the world today, there's two things. You got the state of the world that's going on, but then you have social media presenting something else. So if you spend all your time looking at, oh, look at Shane went to Acapulco this weekend, and now he's over and doing this, and oh, look at he got a new Corvette, and you don't know any backstory. And Shane's not telling you what his life is like. He's just putting some pictures on of, he happened to walk by a Corvette in a parking lot and took a picture. You don't have no context.
Right.
But you're sitting in your college class with no outside window, looking at a 1980s computer monitor going, wow, really? Look at that guy. This is my life. And if you spend time comparing your life to other people's life, you're not going to have a very happy life. And I think because of social media and just the ability to know what's going on in the world, if you're not careful, it will drag you down.
And
I
think even when we talk about leading through challenges or through crises, that same thing applies. Who is your peer group, and are you being honest with each other about what you're fundamentally dealing with, or are you only talking about the rosies? I put on LinkedIn the other day a picture of one of our guys had come home and there was a snowman in his yard. And of course, I thought it was great that snowman has a Westcom t-shirt, Westcom hat, even had a red scarf. Like, come on, red, white, and blue. This is flat awesome, right? Put it on social media on LinkedIn and talked about how cool our employees are, but maybe their children are even better than the employees. I would never want to rate them, but it's a close call. So the employee comes, finds me, he's like, do you realize, like, I live in white trash. You see the ladder in the background and everything? I'm like, whoa, Corey, wait a second. You're normal? Like, that's the whole point here. Our social media account better never become the latest, cutest, whatever. It's like, we've posted some really stupid things on there that we probably
Apparently,
shouldn't
I'm going to have to go back and look because I didn't notice that. I noticed the snowman.
well, I know, but see, that's a weird part about us as humans, right? These little challenges and these crises are as big as we make them ourselves. And if we don't have people around us that we can trust and have honest conversation, we don't ever get pulled back. Because he laughed about it as soon as we were done, you know? We all have that stupid pride that gets the best of us. Unless you're from Wyoming. I did a podcast with a Wyoming guy. I don't know if he had a cow crap on his shoes apparently when he came in here. So it probably depends where you're from as much as you deal with that. So I'm hearing, let's listen to each other during a crisis. Let's have this unwavering belief that things will get better while acknowledging the brutal reality of the circumstances we're at. Did I paraphrase?
There you go.
And then let's also make sure that we constantly give each other the space that who knows when that is, but it will get better. Should we relate our experiences with each other? Because you just got done telling me that turns out, what'd you call yourself? A fat, middle-aged something. You didn't put yourself in a healthy view there.
I have an inflated sense of worth.
Okay.
So every once in a while, I got to deflate myself.
Well, I'll do you a favor. This fat, middle-aged man, does he have a role to play in sharing in these experiences?
I think that's what my point was, that because of life experiences, there's value. Because you have this backlog of, yeah, I did make it through that bump and this bump and this bump, and here I am today. Still going, still happy, still loving life.
And even when you're not feeling 100%, there's people around you that are looking up to you and inspired by you, whether you wish to acknowledge it or realize it or not. In fact, this employee, I happened to run into him in the hallway yesterday afternoon, and he said, hey, come in my office for a minute. And I popped in his office, he closed the door, and he's like, do you realize I was like having a tough day? I was so overwhelmed. He said, in my head, I had the biggest mountain of crap going on. And I went and visited with John, and I left just excited. And I think that's so important that we understand as we age. I don't know if I'm aging, but as you age, you never stop approaching 40 real closely. You acknowledge that is a role that you have to play, is taking these experiences. And it's hard to define because, especially in our circle of life and our influence, we don't look at these things, natural things, as crises. We have, bigger hopes and bigger aims than that. But we can still say they're challenges, and we can help the younger generation behind us who grew up in a, frankly, lied to world about the realities that you will face as human beings as you go forward.
Right.
We need you to keep reminding people that, hey, yes, this is a challenge, but guess what? Westcom, 2 years ago, we went through COVID. 4 years ago, we went through an oil change price crash, right? 2 years before that, a different crisis. These will always be present, and what you can do is control your reaction to them. And that's all. Turns out, I think the Ukrainian guy, he's like telling people to come fight over there. And I actually saw somebody like gave up on their political aspiration because they're going over there to fight. Like, good for them. But, there's only so much you can do about the world around you.
You're not going to turn the tide.
Doesn't feel like it. So even when we talk about the energy crisis that's going on, to me, there is a serious crisis. You and I went to a solar conference last fall, and all three of us that went to that conference on the way home, we agreed that this electric grid is so entirely stretched, and America has not acknowledged the impending kaboom / whatever-ish that's going to happen. Pocketbooks are about to get nasty. You think inflation's a problem? Wait till your energy bill doubles on you. And it doubled because you were the exact person who elected folks into office to achieve these made-up goals too quickly. That's all. It's just too quickly. It's not that we can't get better, but you're pushing too quick.
And I have a hard time listening to people that say one thing and do another thing. And it's inherent in all of us to some certain degree. But when you see, if you have a loincloth on and you're living in the woods in a wigwam you built, killing your own food, and you want to have a discussion about energy industry and climate change, I will sit down and I will have a discussion with you because you are proving to me that what comes out of your mouth is your belief system. But when you roll up in your XYZ car after flying in on your jet to accept an award on climate change in a different country, not listening.
I can't follow. And I think that's important also when we talk about leading through crisis, right? We started with this leading. You can't lead people if you have no integrity.
Right.
So make sure you start with that. If you're going to grab somebody and you're going to say, it's going to get better, you best believe it. Because otherwise you can't lead. It's no different than this energy thing that we just talked about. If you cannot show people legitimately that you believe in that, then please do yourself a favor and don't try to be the one that's leading through that crisis. So when we have an issue out on a job site and it's electrical related, and there's, actually this happened out in North Dakota. I went to a well pad, and I don't know if you were with me or not, but our automation tech, it was like 11:55, and he only had 5 minutes to get the client was, "Rawr, by noon it better be done." And we happened to walk in there, and I was like, "Hey, Will, how's it going?" "Oh, horrible. I got 5 minutes to get this done and I can't figure it out. This motor keeps going to the wrong hertz speed and I don't know where to change it." I was like, I don't know, dude. And I'm thinking, how am I going to help him through this, right? And the phone rings and it's Calvin. "Hey, Will, I know you only got a few minutes left. How you doing?" And Will's like, "Calvin, horrible. I can't figure it out." Calvin's like, "Seriously? Do you mind if I remote in and take a peek?" And Will's like, "Would you?" And like 30 seconds later, from 10 hours away, Calvin, all of a sudden, Will's screen did all those magical things that they do. And before you know it, like he found this spot that was supposed to be 10 instead of 30. I don't know what it did and how, whatever, but it was 11:59 and the site started up. Leading through crisis might have get all in as part of this. Get all in. Don't sit in your office and tell them it'll be better and then hang up. Get all in. And there's certain times in that crisis, I was of no help whatsoever. I would have never found that screen, let alone known that it should have been in 10 instead of a 30. I always thought bigger numbers were better. Yeah, right. I would have been hitting F3, F6, and then I think I probably would have been negotiating a better deal for the client about how I'm going to make up lost production. Instead, the real leader showed up who knew how to solve it, and he executed.
Well, we talked about in one of our meetings this week about trust, which is another big thing, and the 3 elements of it. And one of them was the ability. So you have to have the ability to do it too, which is what you're referring to there.
Yeah, I think just knowing when to step out as the leader, like I can inspire you that things will get better and we're going to make it through this, but bringing it back that I'm going to help you accomplish a couple tasks to reignite you, I might need to lean on somebody else to help you actually accomplish those tasks because it might be out of my lane. So
I have the right intent. I just don't have the ability to do it.
Yep, but I'm going to find somebody who does have that ability, right? I'm not going to leave you high and dry and hanging out there. Do you think we're going to have another crisis in business?
Is it going to get dark tonight?
Yeah. Going to happen.
It's going to happen. That's what life is. In fact, that's what's enjoyable about life. If you didn't have winter, which I do enjoy, could you enjoy summer as much?
I don't think you could.
I don't think you could either. All these things are yings and yangs in my mind. Like you got to have one to enjoy the other. And I don't know, I'm weird, I guess. Like last night, I was literally awake at 4 a.m. in my bed thinking about North Dakota journeyman electricians. And I got a little smirk on my face. Like, I don't know. I'm weird. It's like stressful enough to keep me up at night, but I enjoy it. Maybe I won't enjoy it tomorrow or a year from now or whatever, but I hope I always will because that's the thing that's fun to me is the ups and downs and peaks and valleys and the life part of it.
Well, and boy, when we solve it and then we get to go out and have our softball game this fall and there's a bunch of journeyman electricians that are trying to kick our butt, it's pretty fun, right?
No doubt.
It's not really fun if you just plug into that system. It's pretty fun when you have an impact as to who's that catcher, not because he's good or bad, but because you know he's killing it out on the job site and making sure when you flip your breaker on that you get heat in your house.
Yep.
It's pretty powerful stuff. So leading through crisis, real deal, it's going to keep on going. And folks need to lean in, believe in the Stockdale Paradox, right? Did I
Yep.
get that right?
Stockdale Paradox.
I mean, that's a big word, and I'm not good at big words. But let's
enough.
lean in and know when to step out and how to inspire people. I think it's a really important topic, and one, if you want to succeed in business, whatever success looks like, I don't know what that looks like. I'm just stating if you want to enjoy your team, whether you're on the plant floor or whether you're in the office in the corner, it doesn't matter. Inspire people and lead through these challenges. You don't have to be the CEO to lead. You don't have to be the HR coordinator to lead. Oftentimes, the real leadership happens right out there on the floor, in the
That's where
field
it
pulling the
starts.
wire, for sure. Well, thanks for the chat. Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.